Welcome into Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. This is where we recap some of the top interviews and guests you've heard and seen on our Eye on Northeast Kansas TV show. It comes to you live 4 o'clock Central Time, Monday through Friday, streaming from our WIBW studios in Topeka, Kansas on WIBW.com. Here on the podcast, we've been on a hiatus of sorts for the past couple weeks. We've had a lot of things going on, a lot of activity, and so we are glad to be back with you here on the podcast. Hope you haven't missed any of the action, though, if you follow us on our social media channels. Ahead today on our Eye on Northeast Kansas podcast, we want to tell you about new efforts regarding human trafficking and raising awareness, helping people find resources, and also helping people escape. Topeka and Shawnee County has had an anti-human trafficking coalition where groups have been working together to address this issue for a long time now. There is also a Kaw Valley anti-human trafficking task force, which involves law enforcement in terms of gathering resources and finding out where this is at. The YWCA of Northeast Kansas has a Center for Safety and Empowerment. They recently have had some expansions in order to address helping survivors of human trafficking. All of that has led to a way and an answer to the question of how do you help people connect with the resources that are available? How do you help people figure out what they can do if they suspect something is going on? And if you yourself are in trouble, how do you get the help to move past and be a survivor? Sharon Sullivan of the Topeka and Shawnee County Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition joined us along with Maggie Cora from the Kaw Valley Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force and Christina Chavez of the YWCA Center for Safety and Empowerment. They told us what they have developed in order to answer the question. All of you work together on this very important issue. And Sharon, how large of an issue is it around our area?
Well, it's unfortunately a very large issue. And I don't think we even have good numbers yet because we're only now beginning to understand the number of people that are exploited and abused through human trafficking.
It's certainly something that you see at the YWCA Center for Safety and Empowerment, Christina. In fact, do I understand correctly, it's actually driven an expansion in your efforts there?
Yes. So about 4 years ago, we're actually coming into our 5th year in November, we opened the day center to help provide services directly to persons who are experiencing human trafficking or who may be more vulnerable to human trafficking.
And it is a complex issue. Who does your group work with, Maggie?
We work with both law enforcement as well as victim services. So.
And what have you been learning in terms of studying it from that perspective?
Yeah, that it is something that is happening. It is something that it's real and it's happening in this area. And it might not always look like what we see in the movies or on the news, but it's something that may be happening with people that we may know and neighbors. So it's really important to be educated and to just create more public awareness around it. So.
And that is what you came up with, this idea for the QR code. And let's go ahead and put it up on screen now, and we will put it up again at the end of our discussion. Sharon, what is the point of this QR code?
So this QR code was developed by a survivor of sex trafficking, actually, and I met her at a conference last year, and she developed this QR code. It says something like abused, tricked, coerced, and ask for help. And I love this idea because it never says human trafficking, because we know that many victims do not identify as human trafficking victims. So if this person is being abused, they can scan the code and they'll have the option of either finding out more about human trafficking, giving an anonymous tip. If they've seen something but they don't want to get involved with law enforcement, they can leave information. Or if they're experiencing exploitation and abuse, they can ask for help. And I love that because there's so many options for people.
How difficult is it? So once someone does ask for help or realize that they need to get away from the situation that they're in, Christina, how difficult is it for it to actually happen? And then what is the umbrella of services that needs to wrap around that person?
I mean, the initiation of services for us is just the ask. And the difficulty as far as providing services can become quite complicated, but when we have teams such as the coalition through Topeka Shawnee County, as well as the Kaw Valley Human Trafficking Task Force, and creating that multidisciplinary team creates a much bigger network casted, so we can provide that much more services. But it can take time. But the voluntary initiation and receiving those tips through the QR code from survivors directly is what we need in order to get that motion moving and get the whole team in.
And beyond survivors asking for help, because sometimes that can be difficult for them to do, through the task force, what has law enforcement been learning, and what are some challenges that they face in being able to tackle the problem?
Yeah, we're learning that tips are very important, because we're learning that sometimes, like you said, it is hard for victims. They're not just going to come forward and say it, and they need help with that. And so that's where the QR code is going to be very beneficial, because there will be more resources for people to do so, and also for friends to help victims as well.
Because it is hard to know where to turn. I wouldn't know the first call to make.
Right.
Right? So who should be the first call? Do you have any ideas? What should be the first call if you suspect it's in your neighborhood, for example?
Well, I would recommend if you see an emerging situation that you think is urgent, call 911. But if you think it's something that's ongoing and long term, then certainly contact the QR code or contact the Kaw Valley Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. They'll look into it. I've actually had friends say, hey, I've seen something in my neighborhood. I'm not sure it's okay. And will you let law enforcement know? And I'm like, sure. And then I reach out to the task force and they're like, yep, we got our eyes on it.
Very good to know. And here is that QR code again. Again, you can use it to report tips, get resources, seek help for yourself or maybe someone you know. Just scan the code. And then if you'd like some stickers or flyers that have this QR code, that's where Sharon says, just give her a call. ssullivan@ippistars.com is the email address. I will get that on WIBW.com as well. Ladies, thank you so much for filling us in. It's a complicated issue and one we just continue to learn more about. So we appreciate you being here and letting us know about the work you're doing.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Melissa.
you. If you head to our Eye on Northeast Kansas page on WIBW.com, or you can find the post on my Facebook page, WIBW Melissa Bruner, you can see that QR code, you can scan it, and you can find out what sorts of resources are available simply by scanning that code. So important that everybody's working together to address this issue. Speaking of the YWCA of Northeast Kansas has a new CEO. Sherry Fonts is on the job, and one of her first visits was to us in our WIBW studios for Eye on Northeast Kansas. She was joined by the YWCA board chair, Gina Millsap. Glad you're here. So Sherry, welcome. One day on the job. How's it been?
I'm putting the puzzle pieces together.
It is a learning curve anytime you step into a new role. What attracted you to the YW's position and the organization?
Oh my goodness, so much. The depth and the breadth of work that we do in this community. I've been in Topeka for 2 decades, love this town, love the work that we do. And the more that I learned about the YWCA, the more I needed to be connected on a deeper level.
What is it that you would like to see advance and grow?
Definitely want people to know more about the work that we do. The YWCA is on a mission. And what does that mean? We're on a mission to empower women. We're on a mission to end racism. A lot of folks get us confused with the YMCA. We're not a club. We don't have a pool. We're actually here to advocate and to make a deep impact for women, for victims, for survivors and their families.
When you were looking for a new leader to succeed Kathleen Marker, who retired from the role, Gina, what was the board looking for?
We were looking for another great leader. Kathleen spent 7 years really turning around and reinventing the YW. And now what we were looking for was someone who could be a great leader in her own right and build on the foundation that has been built over the last 7 years. And we know that Sherry.
Where is your top priority right now?
Actually, we'll be opening a second part of our Center for Safety and Empowerment, which is our shelter for survivors of domestic abuse and trafficking. And so we're excited about increasing capacity. We're not necessarily excited about the need to have to do that.
Right.
But the reality is we won't have to turn people away, and that's really important.
How are you working, Sherry, already to perhaps build some connections and bridges? Because that's a tough issue. No one organization can do it on its own. And so it's a matter of everybody kind of finding their niche, making sure you're not duplicating things, but at the same time growing to meet where the gaps exist.
So actually, I'm so glad you asked that question, because there's an opportunity for folks to get engaged and get involved. We're looking to fill the shelter with supplies that we need that are missing, like some appliances, bedding, different things like that to help make our house a home. So folks can do that by going to Target, searching the YWCA, not YMCA, YWCA, to find our registry and to donate those necessary items.
Absolutely. People kind of sometimes, I think, wonder why in the year 2024 do we have a focus on empowering women? Because women have come a long way. Why do we still have a focus on social justice and equity? And here we are on the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board, in the birthplace of the Brown v. Board case. And we've been hearing a lot of national studies about how we are still seeing some divisions. So how do you work on that priority and that piece of the YW's mission?
I think the first part is education, making sure that folks are aware and helping to prevent that, inspiring and empowering women to take a stand, to build a better home and life for their families.
Where can people go? First of all, Gina, when is the new shelter going to open?
Next month.
And how many spaces does that add? Is it like around 30?
I think it's around 30. Yeah.
Where do people bring their donations, their gifts that you need?
Well, first of all, just going to Target is a
Yes.
good first step. And then the YW's building is on 12th Street. And you'll notice, I mean, there is a swimming pool still there, but Great Life actually owns and runs that. And so they can deliver their items there if they'd like.
We have seen so much happen and discussions over the past year, because violence prevention is another one. How does that all tie into the things that you'd like to achieve, Sherry?
We are going to be digging deep into building a multi-year strategic plan and figuring out how we can build momentum on the great work that our staff are already doing, how we can really focus on raising that awareness, and how we can build that long-term sustainability. So that'll be a big part of what our board will be working on alongside staff. We'll be doing a listening tour with the community as well to help deepen that impact.
Building the prevention piece on the front end so that maybe you don't need the shelter space on the back end one day in the future. Sherry, thank you so much for being here. Gina, appreciate you sharing.
Thanks,
as
Melissa.
well. Welcome.
The YWCA isn't the only organization we have helping women and families. A lot of groups are doing that. One of them is Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas. They recently have been working closely with the Greater Topeka Partnership to address one of the great needs that seems to be facing the workforce in Topeka and Shawnee County: finding affordable child care. It's kind of a twofold issue. One is child care providers don't have as many slots available. It's said that we only are meeting about less than 50% of the need for child care in Shawnee County. Part of the challenge in being able to add slots for many providers is finding qualified workers in order to have a staff available that would be able to care for children in order to make slots available. The other issue is cost. Parents are simply having trouble footing the bill for child care. A new effort called Family Forward is working to address all of those concerns. We had Melissa Mosher of Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas join us with Trina Gose of GTP to talk about what it is.
Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So if people, Melissa, have not heard of Family Forward, what is it?
Family Forward is a collaboration between Go Topeka and Child Care Aware of Kansas. And we have launched a website, which will have our ribbon cutting later in the week. And it's really just to have people become aware of the deficit in childcare spots, and also how to help people if they have between jobs or things like that where they need funding for childcare. And it also is a one-stop for anybody who's interested in getting into childcare. They can come fill out one application, and it goes out to several programs that can call them up for an interview.
It's kind of this dual-edged sword. What is the gap in child care slots? And then even if you can find one available, what's that additional struggle for the parents?
It is, and this, the struggle is finding one that maybe is the same hours that you're wanting, or provides the education or the curriculum that you're wanting, but then also comes back to, do they have enough staffing to cover all of those classrooms that they have? So our real agenda is to bring in the staff so they have qualified staff, but also to be able to have those openings for quality care that parents are looking for.
Why is this a concern for businesses, Trina?
So workforce is a huge thing. It's very important for businesses, and if a person can't find childcare, then they may not be able to work. So in order to grow the workforce, in order to attract people, childcare needs to be available for families.
How tight is it right now? What is the deficit in slots that we have in Shawnee County?
Right now, I think we are short about 48% of the need. Close to 6,000 slots is what's still needed in Shawnee County.
So Family Forward has several initiatives, several ways that you're going about this. The first is what you're calling to be a champion for childcare. What is that about, Melissa?
And that's reaching out to our businesses. They can become a champion for childcare several different ways. One of them is if they are taking their hours and changing them so parents are able to get to childcare and then to work and not be late. Some of it could be opening their own facility and having care on site for their employees. And another big way is to contribute to our Family Forward Now fund. And that fund would be used for parents who have a gap in employment and in their child care paying for it, or if maybe they have their air conditioner breaks down and it's that choice between paying for child care or paying for that repair. Those are some funds that we would be able to allocate for them.
Well, first we have to get the fund established and started, correct? It doesn't exist yet. So how are you going about getting the fund actually underway and kicked off?
The fund it started. It's through the Topeka Community Foundation. We are having a launch event, a ribbon cutting, so to speak, on Wednesday at 10 a.m. at Washburn Tech to officially do the big launch of the website and the community fund.
Is the fund just in its fundraising stage right now, or when will parents be able to apply then for assistance?
I think once we have established close to $100,000 in that account, in that fund, we will be able to start administering the scholarships for families.
So you need to give in order for it to actually happen. But then the other thing is creating those slots, and that's what you had mentioned with providing training opportunities, things like that, in order to let people know who are interested in working. Because if we have staff, then that means they can offer more slots. I mean, how big is that challenge for
if we
facilities?
have staff, then we can employ those staff in different programs, and then we can open up slots in those classrooms that maybe were closed earlier because there wasn't enough staffing, which means we have one staff in a classroom of 12 children. We have 12 spots that have just opened up for those kids that may not have any care at this point.
What is the goal? How many slots are you hoping to create as kind of a finite product of all of this?
With the child care grant that we've been working on, our goal is 451 additional slots. And like Melissa said, in order to open those, we do have to have the staff to teach.
Okay, well, if you are interested in all of this, and we will be there Wednesday when you have the kickoff, a ribbon cutting, Family Forward, Shawnee County's Child Care Initiative, 10 o'clock Wednesday at Washburn Tech. They're going to be talking a lot more about this, but if you'd like to get involved, maybe figure out what this is all about, how maybe you can support that fund that they're talking about, familyforwardnow.org. That website is already up and running, and Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas has a lot of resources as well. In fact, you've got this county by county map that updates in real time the need that exists out there, and so we're excited to see where this goes.
Awesome.
Trina, Melissa, thank you both very much.
Again, keep an eye out for those updates from Family Forward. They do have a website where you can find information, and that fund that they talk about to be able to provide grants for assisting families in getting care or filling some short-term needs or gaps, that is just getting up and started. And so once they have enough donations there, they will be able to start making awards out of that. So keep posted on Family Forward's efforts. We'll be following that very closely. We have been in the midst of a mental health awareness campaign on WIBW. It's called Hear Me, See Me. Go search for our companion podcast. It has some great stories and information as well. On Eye on Northeast Kansas, we welcome Dr. Christina Menager of the Eastern Kansas VA Health System. Ahead of Memorial Day, she talked a bit about veterans' mental health.
Veterans certainly face some unique challenges as they serve and later transition back to civilian life. And we're taking time ahead of Memorial Day today to gain some understanding and to look closer at resources available here locally to help. Dr. Christina Menager is with the Eastern Kansas VA Health System, specializes as the program manager for suicide prevention. Dr. Menager, good to see you.
Yes.
Thanks for being here today. And we're here to talk about, obviously, some resources that are available for veterans in Northeast Kansas. We're hearing so much more about mental health everywhere these days, but it's specifically important for our veterans. Talk about your work.
Yeah, so a lot of my work focuses on how to both prevent suicide in our veterans. A lot of folks don't know suicide is the #1 clinical priority for the VA. The VA is very focused on reducing suicide numbers, and that can look like a wide variety of things. Everything like getting veterans connected with support and resources, to making sure they have good quality mental health and substance use care. We also have specialized treatment for veterans who have experienced suicidal thoughts or have attempted to end their life as well, to help them get better and lead productive lives.
You mentioned getting them access, and there was
Yes.
actually some news that came out today from the VA nationwide, basically talking about an improvement in response times to get veterans better access to primary care, but also to mental health services. A 7% increase year to year in terms of a quicker response time for those mental health resources. That's got to be some good news from your side, seeing things in the clinical side.
Absolutely, yes. Even when we do have long wait times, veterans do have access to care in the community.
Right.
That is one of the laws that was passed recently by Congress. However, care at the VA, because of our specialized knowledge and interest about veterans, we're able to really provide that quality care that veterans need, that's veteran focused. So yeah, wonderful news that we've seen a decrease. If there are any veterans watching, all you have to do is come to the local VA here in Topeka. You can also call 785-580-3111. That's our number, and ask to get connected with mental health resources.
That's some good information,
Yeah.
and we'll put that number online when we post this segment later in the show on WIBW.com. For all of us who maybe are not a veteran and we talk about wanting to help, what can we do specifically maybe as community members to be supportive of the veterans who need our support? They need mental health services, they need that suicide prevention intervention. What can we be doing?
A couple different things. One is to be aware of the resources. So if someone does come to you and they're struggling or in crisis, you can point them in the right direction. So in addition to our local VA resources, one of the most important numbers to know is 988. That is our National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are calling about a veteran, or if you yourself are a veteran or service member, you then press 1 to connect with the Veterans Crisis Line. We have many folks who are concerned about veterans they know call that number, and they're able to access help and resources as well. And then there's a lot of really wonderful online resources that you can connect them to as well. But I think the most important thing is simply to listen, to let them know that you're here, that you're willing to support them, and get them access to care in whatever way that they need. That's really important.
We're coming into Memorial Day weekend, obviously a time when we think about the veterans who paid the ultimate sacrifice, all veterans in terms of their service to our nation. It's an important time of the year, but I have to imagine it can be, obviously a tough time too for some veterans who may be out there.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to plan ahead when you know those difficult days are coming. It could be Memorial Day, 4th of July is also a difficult time for many of our veterans, or certain anniversaries as well for them. And one of the things they can do is to make sure they've accessed that care. And there's also a wonderful app online that I recommend to veterans, especially if they've struggled with suicide in the past. It's a safety plan app. They can create a plan that when they're struggling, what are some tools and resources that I can use to help me to feel better? Yeah. The best way is to prevent.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Well, this is great information. I'm going to post that phone number and that resource on our web story with this at WIBW.com. Dr. Christina Menegé, the program manager for suicide prevention for the Eastern Kansas VA. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for all you do for our veterans as well.
Very welcome.
You can reach out to the Eastern Kansas VA for information on what they have available to help veterans. Remember, if you are in crisis or a loved one, you can call that Suicide Prevention Lifeline 988. You can also find a whole host of resources on WIBW.com/hearmesee.me. The state of Kansas, as we head into the summer months, this is kind of appropriate, sunny season, right? Well, let's talk a bit about solar energy. The state of Kansas this past legislative session and recently signed into law changes in the state's solar energy laws. It is said by advocates that this could be a boost to solar being an option for businesses and residences. Malcolm Proudfit of Good Energy Solutions, which is based in Lawrence, Kansas, visited us to explain.
You obviously work in solar energy, so this is a big deal for you.
Yes.
In basic terms, what is it that's going to change in the law come July 1st?
Sure. So today was a big day. We actually just came from the Capitol signing this new bill that got put in place today. What it does is it increases the amount of solar that can be pushed out onto the grid. So it used to be limited to only 1% of Evergy's capacity, which could come from solar. And so that was a threat to not only businesses like mine, but also to homeowners and business owners in Kansas to not have that freedom of choice of how they produce their energy.
In practice, what did that mean? Did that mean that if you wanted to put solar on your house, maybe you were prevented from doing it, or maybe you couldn't necessarily use what was coming from the solar panels as much?
That's right. You would have been able to install still, but not under a net metering agreement, which makes the economics of a project really work quite well for a customer.
So the whole reason to do it is to be able to use it and not use it from another source.
Yes, because under net metering, the grid acts as a virtual battery for you. If you overproduce at any point, you send that out to the grid, and that's stored as credits via your bidirectional meter. And so at night, when your system isn't producing, you can pull those credits off the grid and use them to run your TV or air conditioner or whatever else is going on in your house.
It's very technical.
It's quite technical, yes.
I just want to know, am I going to save on my bills, right? So
Yes.
what is the attractiveness and the advantage of solar energy that you'd like to see more people use it and invest in it?
Sure. So I actually went solar this year. I'm a relatively young man still, and bought a home, and we installed solar. What was great about that is I'm saving about $100 a month on average on my monthly electric bill, plus I availed a 30% tax credit of the cost of the system off of my taxes this year, not to mention adding to the value of my home by adding the solar.
And because of the new percentages that are going to be allowed for a business, is that where we really might start to see some impact? Because I imagine it's a one thing, the expense and the credits and all of that, when you're talking about, I guess, like the power of compounding usage and size. A business is going to want a larger solar array. Your home, maybe you'd have something smaller.
Yes, so that was the second facet of the bill that was passed. Not only did we increase that cap of solar that can be pushed onto the grid, but we increased the system size for each individual system that can be interconnected to the grid.
How much, and as we look at some video that you all provided to us, you can see just the different ways that solar panels look in different situations and different usages. There you go. How might this also assist in terms of improving solar development and technology that goes into exactly how solar energy is going to work if you're able to provide more of an incentive for people to actually use it?
Sure. So this bill helps to make solar make sense for a lot more homeowners and a lot more businesses out there. Whereas before, the rules were a little more stringent and restrictive, and large businesses, say Walmart or Home Depot with really large roofs, really couldn't install the amount of solar that they needed to offset their consumption. But now under this new bill, they can, and they can make a meaningful dent in both their bottom line, help to increase their bottom line, but to reduce their carbon footprint as well.
What sort of investment would there be for people, for a typical homeowner, say, to utilize some solar, have some of it installed?
Sure. So we saw a flash there of my home. That was a 10-panel system, 4 kilowatts in DC rating, and that system would retail at around $15,000 to $16,000.
Is it more so the energy savings on your bill, or is it also, like you said, the environmental impact portion of it? What tends to be more the motivation for people?
Well, I grew up doing a lot of hiking and spending a lot of time in the outdoors, so that was a big motivator for me, was reducing my carbon footprint. But, I financed that system over 20 years like most solar customers do. So I'm replacing my monthly electric bill with a slightly smaller monthly loan payment. And so I'm seeing those savings compound for me over the years, especially as utility rates will continue to climb over the next 20 years, but my loan rate is going to stay the same.
Well, it's new things to consider, new things to maybe ask if it makes sense for you. You can reach out to experts like a company like Good Energy Solutions and kind of get a sense of what actually would all be involved for you. So Malcolm, I appreciate you being here and explaining what's going on and the changes as we all talk about alternative energy.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll see what happens in the days and weeks ahead as alternative energy discussions, of course, become a big topic of conversation, not just in Kansas, but of course around the nation and globally too. In Topeka, we have been examining some of the issues surrounding youth sports and sporting events in general and what kind of shortcomings we have or challenges we have to really being able to maximize what we can do in the sports arena. Mike Bell of the Greater Topeka Partnership and head of the Topeka and Shawnee County Area Sports Commission joined us with an update on a survey that was done on what habits there are surrounding amateur athletic competition and perhaps what we might be missing in Topeka and Shawnee County that could be a benefit to us overall, economically especially. Here's what Mike had to say.
Thanks for having me.
So I think last time you visited this show, you were talking about the survey that was going out in late 2023 to kind of get a sense of what was happening, spending habits, travel habits. The results are in, huh?
Absolutely. Late 23, we did that survey. Got a little over 1,200 people that actually responded to our survey. Pretty good sampling of our community, and those 1,200 are traveling, and they're traveling for a lot of different activities and outside of our community. So really that economic outflow is what we wanted to find out. And I can pull one example of there were 248 families that answered just baseball. Now, if those families traveled one day outside of our community, that's about $60,000 that just leaves our community that could have been spent here in Topeka. And not only that, we've got people that leave the community and just can't participate in things that we have. So fun events in our community that we have, and also maybe volunteer for an event down the road.
What are some of the successes, though? Because on the one hand, you say you learned that, but we also hear that we do have a lot of softball and baseball tournaments that travel into Topeka throughout the summer. We can't host every single tournament, but how do we build on those findings and what we already have?
Well, you're right. There was a couple great events this past weekend. There was a race on Miniger Hill. It was a mountain bike race, cycling event, and that cycling event brought kids from all over the state, and they participated. So that was a really great event that they had. And then we have also boxing at the Evergy Plaza.
Yes,
that was crazy.
6,000 people.
Yeah, so there are a ton of things going on in our community.
And more coming up.
And more coming up, of
What
course.
sorts of things are coming up, even just in the week ahead?
Oh, the week ahead, we've got state championship softball. We've got state champion soccer. We've got a couple of other things coming up with things going on at Crossover tennis, a real gem of our community. And then one of the big things that I was really excited about is the Topeka Trails Association, the Top City Trails Association, is getting ready to unveil their downhill course at the Carr River State Park, which will be, as they say, the best downhill race course
for biking.
For mountain biking in the state. So that's really exciting. Of course, and pickleball, Family Park. Oh my gosh, there are so many things coming up.
Well, this is Travel and Tourism Week. So when you talk about these sporting events, how does the sporting events relate to travel and tourism for the community overall?
Sure. Those folks they may not even think of Topeka, but everybody that comes to your destination and decides to put a business or whatever always is a visitor first. So what we want to do is really promote traveling to Topeka. Sports is a great way to travel. You've got kids, you can sample what's going on in our community, you can sample what the locals like, and just really enjoy our facilities in Topeka. So that's why travel and tourism is so important.
Well, we look forward to hearing how the survey is going to lead to more plans ahead, because I imagine it will.
Yeah, we will take this and use it as an advocacy piece to look at new projects and try to figure out where we can utilize most bang for our buck, I guess you would say.
Well, come back in a couple months and tell us what those plans are.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear it. We'll be touching base with Mike and the Topeka Area Sports Commission as conversations continue on how we use these survey findings to maybe make changes, maybe pursue avenues we hadn't thought of before. It is summer sports season. There are some great softball and baseball complexes in particular in Topeka and Shawnee County. A lot of youth events do pass through, so we'll see what has to do with that. They also keep looking at Washburn University. In the past couple years, opened a fantastic indoor track, and that has already been host to some major competitions. Hummer Sports Park for the Topeka Public School District, it is undergoing a $1.2 million renovation currently. We'll see if that leads to any additional conversations as well. That's what we have going on in Northeast Kansas over the past couple weeks. Glad we could catch up with you back here on the podcast. Remember, you can see video from these guests and all of our segments on WIBW.com. You can also find them on our YouTube channel. Just search WIBW 13 News. Look for the Eye on Northeast Kansas playlist. You'll find them all there. Be sure to click subscribe while you're there. And of course, our studio selfies, a little behind the scenes look along with the segment links all the time on my WIBW Melissa Bruner Facebook page. Glad to have you along. Until next time, we will see you on the Red Couch.